of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. I extend that right to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here on the call today. My name is Sophie Sushon. I'm one of the digital transformation consultants here at the Digital Transformation Hub, a part of the Info Exchange group with Connecting Up. The Hub focuses on digital technology as an enabler to support service transformation, new ways of working, and assisting non-for-profits on the broader digital transformation journey. Before we begin, a little bit of housekeeping. We're on Microsoft Teams today to make it as interactive as possible. So please turn on your camera and stay on mute during the session. If you have any technical issues, please type it in the chat box and I can assist you. We really encourage you to ask any question as you think during the session. No question is too silly. Please pop it in the chat box and Anne and I will answer them by the end of the webinar. If you are on a Wi-Fi connection or have multiple programs open, this sometimes can affect the quality of the audio and video of the webinar. If possible, please close all other programs to have the best experience. Please note this webinar is being recorded and a link of the recording, slides and a short survey will be sent to you after the webinar. Today I'm excited to welcome you to non-for-profit employees mastering Microsoft 365 working with cloud files and introduce you to Anne, our presenter today.
Thank you, Sophie, and thank you everyone for joining me today. In today's webinar, we will learn how to evaluate the best options to suit your needs when sharing files. We will discuss why one option stands out as the preferred options when file sharing. And then in the end, we'll weigh up different considerations when file sharing internally and externally to ensure you got the best fit solutions. So let's get started. We heard a lot about cloud technology, but there are different benefits to cloud technologies that you might not have known. The first one is probably version history. With version history, the version is automatically updated every time when you save a document in the cloud. For example, 0.1, 0.2, or version 1, version 2. With version history, you keep a history of who last edited the documents. And if you want to revert it back to previous versions or view the previous version as well, it's all possible. The second benefit is you can sync the files for offline access. With this feature, it allows you to save a local copy to your device to work on when you are offline or when you're not connected to the internet. With cloud technology, you can collaborate with other people internally or externally very easily. That means you can all edit files at the same time. Changes will normally be marked up on the document so that you can view who made the changes, what they were. You can test it out right away in Office 365 with a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet. So yeah, after this meeting or webinar, you can try it out with your team members right away. The next one I want to introduce is external sharing. It's very convenient if you work with your board members or your clients. Instead of sending a files that we're used to by attaching it to your email, and then you meet with all kinds of issues such as file size limitations or incompatible file type. You can now share larger files by sending links to them. The recipient is then able to access them directly. With cloud technology, you can access files and folders through mobile as well. You can access your document and files anytime, anywhere from all kinds of different devices.
I forgot about it. Oh.
I'm sorry, I may need to mute whoever is turning their mic on. Thank you. Then file level permissions is the next interesting feature as well. It allows you to set different level of access, such as edit, read, owner. So users at different permissions can access file differently. With cloud technology, drag and drop movements of files make it so much easier for you to manage your files, easily upload, remove, or move the file around. So you don't have to copy and paste the file as you used to in the traditional file management way. And probably the last one is the ability to create and store very large file size, larger file size than previously possible. You used to be limited by your network drive capacity. Using cloud technology, we'll now see approximately 250 gigabyte storage capacity, which is massive for us. Talking about cloud or Office 365 specifically, let's discuss what is the difference between them. Let's go back to basics to understand the different cloud technology. There are a number of technologies that we will have to look during this webinar, including Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive. These are the main three tools that we'll talk about. So what is Teams? Teams is a collaborative app built for your team, whether working remotely or in the office. Together you can develop, collaborate, and publish your work. It's a workspace hub that has a centralized chat system that connects teams and enable quick messaging, file sharing in a way that's a lot more efficient than email and can cope with much bigger file size. So back in the day when I come into office, I have to open different applications to start work comfortably. But now if you use Teams, you only need to turn on your computer and start Teams applications, which include chat, meeting, files sharing, files management, and all sort of other applications as well. So we'll talk more about Teams in this webinar, and then let's try it out along the way or after this webinar to see what all the good features and what you can do with Teams. So what is SharePoint? With SharePoint, some of you might have heard about this before. If you work with Office 365, we often see SharePoint used by larger NFPs and organizations. It used to be used to store most organizational files. It is designed to enable collaborations and sharing across organizations or within a restricted group. You will often find that large NFPs and organizations use it for their intranet. And the last one is OneDrive. OneDrive lets you store and protect your personal files. You share them with others by granting them permissions and access them from any location or device. So back in the day, a lot of my clients store their files on their local computer, but now with OneDrive, they use it as a substitute for their local drive, so they can access their files from home, from any devices, whenever they want. In general, SharePoint or Teams are for organizational files. OneDrive is for your personal files. Let's talk in more details. When should you use OneDrive? OneDrive should be used to store documents and files that you wish to keep to yourself privately. It looks a lot like the old network drive that we had for your personal use, but way more useful and easier to access. With the move to remote learning and working a lot from home, a lot of school and businesses have moved to using OneDrive for file storage. It can also be used to store and share draft documents with a few people on a temporary basis until it's ready to eventually store in Teams. OneDrive allows you to sync files from the cloud to your computer. Personal OneDrive, Teams, or SharePoint document libraries, they all can be synced to your computer. By syncing, I mean with OneDrive, you no longer store files or on your PC, but in the cloud to protect them from loss or deletions. Changes are updated whenever you have an active internet connections. Key folders such as desktop, documents, or pictures, etc., should also be synced to your personal OneDrive. These files or folders can be managed using Windows Explorer and Sync on demand to conserve bandwidth and file storage. What do I mean by saying on demand? So Microsoft has early in the day, when you sync OneDrive to your computer, all the files are downloaded to your computers. But In that case, that means it eats up a lot of storage space on your computer. So Microsoft invented a thing called on-demand. When you sync the file in your OneDrive or your Teams files or your Teams folder, those files are not actually downloaded to your computer. What are downloaded to your computer is all the metadata. By metadata, I mean files names, who created it, last date modified, file type, all that information about the files. So it takes less storage space. The moment you click on that files or folders with an active internet connections, that is when the file is actually downloaded to your computer. It's very smart in a way that the most used files will be kept offline, will be downloaded frequently to your computer and get the latest versions. When you no longer use it as frequently, it's going to be removed from your computer. There's also an option to always download the files. So if you would like to keep the files on your computer physically and you work offline a lot, so you also have the options to download the files to your computer instead of using the on-demand features. Move on to Teams. Teams is the front interface for SharePoint and OneDrive. So you're just accessing them from a different front end. Teams directs you to SharePoint when you open a file, or OneDrive when you share files in a private chat. Remember that a private chat is only visible to whoever participating in the chat. So try to minimize the amount of file shares in private chat, as once the person leaves your nonprofits, the private chat will become inaccessible and it's harder to manage the files. Move your files from OneDrive to Teams when you are ready to collaborate with your teams in pairs. So normally if you want to share your files with other team members that you are chatting directly, you might want to share the link to the file you stored in your Teams folders instead of just directly uploading the files to the chat. Yeah, it's just a tip so you can manage your files more structurally. And we come to SharePoint. SharePoint is used by several nonprofits that we work with for fast storage and synchronizations. It's very popular before Microsoft introduced Teams, because for smaller nonprofits, we do not recommend the use of Teams, but we recommend the use of Teams instead of SharePoint, because SharePoint is great for larger nonprofits and organizations in a way that they can configure it very detailedly, but that also come with a cons that it would take a lot of effort, times, and resources. So that's why we normally recommend Teams for smaller nonprofits, because it's more manageable. Now that we have explained SharePoint a little, we're going to focus on OneDrive and Teams, as that's the two cloud technologies that the majority of you will be interested in. However, feel free to drop in questions in the chat box or during the Q&A session so we can discuss this further. Let's compare Teams and OneDrive with each other. With Teams and OneDrive, they are both used for file storage. However, the file access is a bit different. Teams access is determined by the permission of the folder, while OneDrive file access personal storage unless you have share permission. So with OneDrive, it is the permission is set to the users who own the OneDrive only by default. If you would like to share the files or folder temporarily with other people, you need to actively share that file or folder. Teams is best used for sharing documents or file for collaborations, while OneDrive is best used for drafting documents or storing your personal files. Version history is available in both tools. So yeah, you you can use and then feel confidence using uploading files and editing files in both tools, because version history are both available, and collaboration is also enabled for both tools. Teams have a more centralized control of permissions, while OneDrive's permission must be managed individually, as I just mentioned before. So for example, files in my OneDrive to Sophie's, I have to click the share buttons and then type in Sophie's name in there to share with her, instead of while if you use Teams folder and the folders is already shared with Sophie, Sophie is already a member in my Teams, and I added her to that Teams and channels. Sophie can access all the files uploaded in that folders in Teams. Microsoft has a bit of that confusions when they name stuff similarly, but when I mention Teams in Office 365, it means Teams applications. And the last ones, Teams has all kind of very diverse features: dashboard, libraries, calendar, branding tools, chat, meetings. Yeah, it's more like a one-stop shop. So you just open up that team applications and you don't have to open any other applications to access all these features. However, OneDrive is more focused on file storage and sharing only. Yes, so remember, OneDrive is to store and edit your personal document files in draft formats, or to store your personal files, and Teams to communicate and collaborate on documents with internal and external teams. Let's talk a bit more about sharing files. Sharing files is very easy when using cloud technology. Instead of sending the files like we did in the old days, we send a link to the document, which enables the recipients to access it. If you need to, you can also send the file itself rather than a link, so you have options. When sending a link to the files in Teams, you do not need to be concerned about the file size or email limits. If you send the file itself, you still need to take these into consideration. For example, your PowerPoint file might be 14 megabytes and your email attachment limit might be 10. In this scenario, file will not be sent. You would be better served to send a link to ensure it gets to the recipient with no delays. Things will become clear when we talk about a case study. So let's look at a real life applications based on what we have learned so far. There's this guy called David. He has to draft a grant proposal and wants to save it somewhere where it can be accessed by anyone except him. So he's going to use OneDrive first. Once David has finished the draft and proofread it himself, and he's happy with it, he needs to get to his colleague to review it. So what do you think the best way to facilitate it? Yes, so as he wants multiple people to review it at the same time, but it's not the final version, just a draft that needs to be reviewed. He can either create a link, a temporary link to share the OneDrive files, or he can move the draft into a specific Teams area so people can access them to review them together. He create a link and send the link to his team. His team can access the draft proposal and mark it up with any changes and comment. David can review it in real time, any changes and comments, as well as who has made them if he needs any clarifications. People working in it on the same time can ensure that the proposal is ready on time. Once David has resolved all comments and completed the review feedbacks, everyone is happy with the proposal and ready for board approval. He can now send the link for the finalized version so the board can review them. So with this case study, you can see that you no longer copy the document and put version 1.2, version 2 final, version 3 final in with all that proposal, and then your team will be confused about which one is the final versions. Is the final the one named final is the last versions, or the latest versions is last versions. You only use one single document with version history, so that no one will be confused about which documents is the final versions. Yeah, cloud technology is just, yeah, very useful in that way. So now I'll hand back to Sophie for the Q&A sessions. Please pop in question in the chat or turn on the mic to let us know.
Thanks, Anne. That was really informative. As Anne mentioned, please pop any questions in the chat or come off mute. I've got some questions that came in before the session started. So my team's channels have been set up organically. I'd like to use Teams for files, but it doesn't reflect my file structure. Will I need to clean this up?
Normally, whenever you move from your local computer or server into the cloud technology environment, any cloud platform, we usually advise our client to clean up and then sit down with their team members, look at the file structure, review it, and restructure and archive all the old files, restructure the structure to reflect the latest structure of your organizations. There are different ways to structure folders in Teams to reflect your organizations, either by Teams functions or by departments, or a mix as well. But the core message here is because you move into a cloud platform it's a more collaborative environment. So it might work a bit differently, but it comes with a chance and opportunity for you to actually clean up the files and make it work better to serve your business. So yeah, always clean up, review your structure before moving into the Teams environment. And once you move into Teams environment, you can structure it by setting up different channels in the Teams, setting up different permission levels, then setting up different folder structure as well. So there are more in the next Lunch and Learn sessions. We will talk more in details about Teams and how you can manage Teams. So stay tuned for more Lunch and Learn sessions so we can discuss about that, or you can visit our website to view our guides to find out more about Teams. Do you want to add anything, Sophie?
That's great. Thank you, Anne. We've got another question here from Alison. It's a SharePoint question, but it's also a sharing documents question. Sending a link to an external person, can they always access it? I found to have issues with this. And what would the issues be? Can we be sure they can only see the one document?
So sharing externally is a bit tricky in a way that your admin or whoever control your SharePoint tenant or the Office 365 environment need to allow external sharing first. I've worked with health organizations that they are very strict with their data. They do not want their sensitive data to be leaked anywhere. So they do not allow external sharing with their Office 365 environment. So make sure that you have contact your IT provider or your administrator to see that whether external sharing is allowed in your environment. Once that is allowed, you can choose to share a file or a folder. If users can only access a files, I doubt that they might only be only a file is shared with them through that sharing link, not a whole folder. So before sending it out, sending a file or sharing a file or folder, and you're not really confident about that, make sure to test it out with your own email address to see if it works well. Sharing externally is very easy if user if the other users also use Office 365. If they're not using Office 365, they might need to set up a Microsoft account with the email that is shared, depending on the way your IT provider configure the environment. So that's why I said SharePoint is a bit trickier and it's more widely used in larger NFP because you can highly configure SharePoint.
Thank you, Anne. I'll just add to that you can also check who has access to the document, similar to the way that you can in Google Workspace. So there is that functionality still there. It's just the permissions that are set in your account. So maybe have a chat with your IT provider.
I want to add a bit to that. Normally other normal user cannot, like Sophie said, normal user cannot check who have access to documents. But if you use the right type of license and you have the administrator role, you might track the who have access to files or folder up to, I think, up to 30 or 90 days. I'm not sure if they have changed the retention date policy, but it takes a lot of time and effort to trace back because the large amount of data. If you really need it, you can track it, but with the right type of license and permission level. It's in the admin portal.
Great, thank you, Anne. We have another question here from Diane. When I open a PDF in Teams, I'm either given the option to download or open it in SharePoint. I just want to be able to print it. It's annoying that you have to download it to print it, so I usually go the SharePoint option. I don't understand why it works this way. Can you explain a little bit about the interaction between Teams and SharePoint?
So normally when my users, they use Teams and they want to manage file or work with files the way they used to work, such as those in the File Explorer environment. So let's move back to that slide. Yeah, they want to be able to open up the file directly, easily, and then print out the file right away instead of having to download it. And me too. I work that way too. I want to easily print the file very easily. So I sync the file folder. What I do is I actually sync my OneDrive or my Teams folder that my Teams normally work to my computer. So I access the file from File Explorer instead of in Teams if you do not want to download the PDF or open it in browser. Do you want to add anything, Sophie?
That's great. I think the Microsoft has a lot of different features for you. It's about finding the best way that works for you. And I jump between the both of using File Explorer and Teams, but I prefer to use it in the applications rather than in the SharePoint browser. So it's really finding what's comfortable for you and playing around with it to see what works. Great. Thank you, Diane. I believe there's no more questions at the moment. If you do have a question, please don't hesitate to reach out. Oh, we've got one question here from Julie, which we can slip in. Can you please explain the status icon in this screen?
Oh, yes, that's an amazing question. So this status icon is very important when you sync OneDrive or Teams folder. It shows that your files are synced to your computer. The cloud icons mean that the file is stored in the cloud and it's currently synced to your computer on demand. On demand is what I've mentioned in the webinar before. It's download all the metadata, not the actual files. The moment you click on it, that is when it's actually downloaded. The tick with a white background, it means that it's currently downloaded to your computer. When you go offline, you no longer have active internet connections, you can still open it. There's another icon, circle with a tick inside, but it has a green background. It means that you choose to always download that files and folder. In order to activate that mode, you right click on the files and folder you always want to keep on the device and choose always keep on device to keep this file downloaded. As always, if you work offline a lot with that files or folder. Great questions. Thank you, Jules.
Thank you. Okay, we might wrap it up there. Thank you so much for joining us today. As I mentioned earlier, a recording and the slide deck and a short survey will be sent to you following this meeting with all the information, and you can always respond or you can jump on the Digital Transformation Hub site and have a look through the guides and chat with us there. Have a lovely afternoon and thank you again.
Thank you. See you in the next webinars. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.